We will begin with opening remarks. There was a coin toss that was conducted prior to this debate, and Scott Tipton has been selected to begin opening remarks.
Well, thank you, Cindy, and I'd like to be able to thank Club 20 and all of you for taking the time to be able to be here. I think all of us need, though, with the upcoming commemoration of 9/11, to pause for a moment to be able to recognize that freedom is not free. And I hope you'll join with me in recognizing the brave men and women of the United States military who fought to keep this nation free. Would you join with me in recognizing them? You know, given what we've had here in our district, I think it's also very important that we recognize the brave firefighters, EMTs, our sheriffs, and our police departments as well, for all of their hard work to be able to keep us safe. During the time that I've had the privilege to be able to represent the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado, we've focused on what's important for our district. To be able to create jobs, to be able to create opportunities, to make sure that we're protecting private property rights, like protecting our private property rights when it comes to water, something that we will continue to make sure that we're standing for, but also to make sure that we're creating opportunities for jobs. We can achieve this, actually, with our Resilient Forest Bill that we passed through the House of Representatives with bipartisan support, to be able to create jobs right here and to be able to create healthy forests for our communities. Standing up for our veterans. Pleased to be able to report to you that we have closed positively 3,000 cases for our veterans to make sure that they are getting the benefits that they deserve. That amounts to about 6% of the 54,000 veterans who live within the 3rd Congressional District. And we've also been very focused on something that's impacting every community in our district, our state, and the nation. And that's the opioid crisis and the heroin crisis that impacted so many. We've held 30 roundtables around our district. We've provided funding now to be able to make sure that we're getting resources back to be able to address that. Standing up for Jordan Cove, moving to get the BLM moved right here, to be able to create jobs and to make sure that we have the people that are making decisions know how we're being impacted right here at home. We have some disagreements. My opponent wants to be able to expand a single health care payer plan with Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi, and Elizabeth Warren. Tonight, I expect Bernie won't tell us, maybe you will, how high you're going to raise our taxes to be able to provide for that big government takeover of health care that you envision. It's a privilege to be able to represent this district. Look forward to our conversation tonight, and I thank you all again for taking the time to be able to be here.
Now, candidate Diane Mitch Bush will have 3 minutes for her opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always great to be back at Club 20. Mechanical difference. How's that? Is that better? No?
Sorry. Reset the time. Are we having, let's try it again. Let's give you a test.
All right. Testing. Nope.
Well, we may have to have a timeout here. We'll switch it out. Editorial comments are not appreciated. Thank you. Okay, I think we're cooking with fire.
All right. Are we? Yeah. All right. Good. As I said, it's so great to be back at Club 20. I was privileged to serve on the Club 20 board for 6 years, and especially privileged to be appointed to the executive committee for 2 of those years. Club 20 has a way of looking at policy that I think we all need to heed. In Club 20, we listen to each other. We look at the facts, we look at the evidence, and we come together and discuss the possibilities. That's what makes good policy, not ideology, not listening to what party leadership does or says or wants us to do, but instead listening to the people and doing your homework. That's been my MO the whole time I served in the Colorado House, and before that, in Routt County as county commissioner. I was known at the Colorado House not only for my integrity, my transparency, and my ability to work across the aisle, but you don't have to believe me. Over 80% of my bills were co-prime sponsored, not a co-sponsor, two sponsors, me and a Republican. It is critical now, more than ever, that we work across the aisle, listen to each other, and be civil and respond to the constituents' needs, not the needs of Washington insiders or big donors. I'm very proud of my record in the Colorado House at cutting red tape. I worked with Western Slope representatives on several bills. One of them was a hydro bill. Before our bill, anyone who wanted to do micro hydro, had those water rights and could do it, had to go through the same process as though you were doing the Hoover Dam. Instead, what we did is work together to streamline that process. And we can do that, remove red tape in so many different ways at the federal level, if only we listen to each other and look at the facts. In 2015, I was honored as Legislator of the Year by two very different organizations, the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union and the Colorado Livestock Association. They're very different in terms of their political affiliations, but they both saw the way I'd worked to remove obstacles for young farmers and ranchers. In the U.S. Congress, we need to fight for agriculture. In the U.S. Congress, we need to fight for an economy that works for everyone. And we need to fight for health care that's available and quality and affordable. The situation we have now is something Bob Rankin and I tried to work on at the State House. Thank you.
Thank you. Each candidate will now be asked to respond to 6 questions from our 3-member panel. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. The candidate who goes first on each question will also have an opportunity to offer a 30-second rebuttal to the other candidate's response for that particular question. The candidate that went first in opening remarks will offer the first response to the first question, and that will be Scott Tipton.
Almost immediately after the 2016 election, the House passed a bill to repeal the Affordable Care Act, but didn't really include any clear thoughts as to what a replacement plan might look like or how it would be implemented. Since that time, the Senate has considered several similar bills, none of which have passed, and generally they've only suggested insurance reform to protect insurance companies. In your opinion, what should an effective health care bill include and not include?
Just to be able to correct that a little bit, through the House, we did pass legislation that the Senate failed to be able to take up and to be able to pass. I think it's important that we step back just a little bit. Under the Affordable Care Act, we were promised not that our rates would slow in the rate of increase, but they would go down on average $2,500. You want to be able to keep your insurance policy? You can. Your doctor? You can. None of that turned out to be true. What we are providing was something that I think that we all ought to be able to agree on. We want to be able to have affordability, but where we live also, we need to be able to have accessibility. To be able to achieve that end, we passed through the House of Representatives a bill to be able to have association health care. For us to be able to come together to form larger groups, to be able to actually lower those costs, to be able to have capitalism, to be able to buy across state lines, to be able to have real choice in terms of what is best going to work for us and what is going to be able to work for our families. We passed through the House of Representatives a provision you cannot be denied. If you're worried about pre-existing conditions, you could not be denied health care insurance under the bill that we have put forward. We're incentivizing private medical health care savings accounts with pre-tax dollars. so that you could take care of those incidental costs, to be able to, again, lower the costs, and to be able to make choices for you and your family. Not to have a one-size-fits-all program set out by the government.
Thank you. Diane, you have 1.5 minutes for your response.
On May 4th, 2017, Mr. Tipton voted for the President's health care plan, claiming that this plan would, quote, lower your premiums and lower your deductibles. In fact, I read the bill, I read bills, that's what I do, and many healthcare analysts agree, this plan would have increased our premiums and increased our deductibles. The Senate didn't pass it. What should we have in a really good healthcare plan? We should have pre-existing conditions actually covered. In the association plans that he is talking about, yes, there's a requirement that the insurance company provide coverage for pre-existing conditions. What it can do, though, is that can charge any price for them. There's no price cap. So it'll be just like previously when most people could not afford insurance for their pre-existing conditions. And they might not even know that this wasn't covered, or if it was, that they'd have to pay through the nose for it, because, of course, that's the fine print. I think it's really important for us to defend Medicare and to defend the Children's Health Insurance Program in any health bill that we have, and moreover, to be sure that we continue to fund our rural health clinics.
Thank you. Scott, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Good news for my opponent. We voted to be able to extend Children's Health Insurance Program 10 years, fully funded, and I just received a nationwide award from the Colorado Health Clinics for the work that we have done to make sure that we're getting those funded as well. If you go back to the actual legislation that we put forward, what she didn't bother to read is you could not be denied health care insurance under the current plan. Look at your $6,500 plus deductible. Ask, is that working for you? Are your increased premiums working for you? They are not. She wants to add on to it.
Our second question, coming from Sandra, will first be addressed to Diane.
Energy production is a critical economic driver for many Western Colorado communities. In your view, what is the future role of fossil fuel resources produced in Colorado in providing for our energy needs, and how do economics, energy security, politics, environmental considerations, and other related factors influence your view?
I come from a coal county and from an oil and gas county. As a county commissioner, I signed permits both for coal and for oil and gas, and we held those companies through stakeholder processes to very important environmental and community and traffic protections. Oil and gas and coal are both great jobs, but they also cost local counties money, so you have to balance that. One of the critical things to bear in mind about jobs in both those industries, oil and gas and coal, is that they're so affected by the international market. When you look at coal, what you've seen is a dramatically decreasing import demand from China. Why? Because they're turning to natural gas, and they're turning to renewables, and they're also importing what coal they have yet to utilize from Australia. So contrary to what some argue, this is not due to regulations, it's due to the market. And ditto when you look at oil and gas. The markets are critical, and you have to keep those in mind. What we do need to do, though, as those international markets change and the jobs decrease, is we have to come up with innovative, creative job training and other ways to utilize coal. Coal can be used for a variety of industrial processes.
Thank you. Scott, you have 1.5 minutes.
When we look at fossil fuels, it's going to continue to play an important role. I like to be able to pursue all of the above. Passed through the House of Representatives with bipartisan support, the Planning for American Energy Act literally enumerates in the bill wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, oil, gas, oil shale, minerals. And I'm going to be supportive of Jordan Cove as well. When we're talking about China, guess who can help supply in the Far East? We can, right here out of Mesa County, out of the Piceance Basin. Let's get Jordan Cove up and running. Let's create jobs right here. Let's continue, from an environmental standpoint, to continue to see those technologies develop for wind, for solar, literally to be able to have that all of the above platform to be able to do it. Good example is hydroelectric. I passed through the House of Representatives, Small Conduit and Hydroelectric and Jobs Act. One of the first opportunities when that was signed into law by President Obama was actually just down the road in Chavano Falls in Montrose, Colorado. An opportunity, again, for all of the above to be able to come together. This is something that we need to make sure that we're taking not only into consideration for wind and solar, but new technologies in responsible energy development with our traditional fuel sources as well. It's about our jobs, it's about our people, it's about revenues for our communities to be able to operate, and the future for our kids as well. We can create those multiple wins.
Thank you.
In the Colorado House and as a county commissioner, I have always supported an all of the above strategy, and I will continue to do so in the U.S. Congress. I think there are several things we have to bear in mind about some of what we're hearing. We really need to look at those international markets. Those international markets for some energy sources are declining. With regard to hydro, I and Don Coram worked really hard on a micro-hydro bill.
Thanks, Diane. Our third question will come from Mike. Scott, you will be the first responder.
The 3rd Congressional District is home to much of Colorado's food production. Many producers rely on migrant workers to plant and harvest crops and attend to livestock, and they require these workers during specific stages of production. The H-2A program is broken and has failed these producers time and again. How will you work to fix this problem and find a practical solution to have workers arrive when needed?
I appreciate that question, Mike, because it is absolutely critical for our district. If you visit not only with the agricultural community, you visit with the hospitality industry, you visit with the construction industry, to be able to have those people to be able to fill those jobs. Actually visited and sent a letter to Kirsten Nelson to be able to address some of the H-2B and also to make sure that we're having an opportunity to be able to address H-2A as well. I'm a supply side guy, that if we have the demand, let's have numbers that actually reflect what the actual demand is going to be and make sure that we're getting the workers in place so that our companies can actually produce products, get corn out of the field, and to be able to work. This is something that has been broken for an extended period of time, even returning visas. We need to be able to accelerate those and be able to have that process go faster. We're working on legislation in the House of Representatives to be able to achieve that. It's about creating jobs and making sure our businesses work here at home, and you identify it correctly. It is broken, and we are working to actually fix that right now in the House of Representatives.
Thank you.
I'm very glad to hear that the House is working on that, because this administration isn't. It is this administration that cut the number of H-2A and H-2B visas. I work a lot with people in ag and also in the resort industry. H-2A is critical for agriculture. Many of our agricultural businesses, whether it's sheep, whether it's the crops here, rely on those workers. Our resort industry relies on those workers. Why were those cut?
Diane, I think that you still have a minute left, and I'd like us to start that time now.
Okay, I was surprised when it came up so fast. So looking at this issue is absolutely critical because agriculture needs labor. You may not know that the mean age of farmers and ranchers in Colorado is 59. What does that mean? It means that younger people aren't going into ranching and farming the way they used to. What I got an award for from both the Colorado Livestock Association and from the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union was a bill which attempted to remove obstacles for those young ranchers and farmers. We need something like that at the federal level. What we don't need at the federal level is limits on these critical 2A, and not for ag, but for resort, 2B visas. They're temporary, they're legal. We shouldn't be cutting back on legal immigration that helps agriculture. I've been working with agriculture in Routt County since the 1980s and throughout.
Thank you. Scott, you'll have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
I appreciate my opponent applauding the work that we're doing in the House of Representatives to be able to achieve those goals. Actually, through some of the letters that we'd sent, they did increase the H-2B visas that have come forward, but I hope you'll join me. One of the best and some of the best custodians of our public lands are our farmers and ranchers. It's critical to make sure that they have access to grazing. I know you disagree with that on public lands. I'm going to stand up for those farm and ranch communities and those opportunities to be able to maintain those jobs and to be able to grow our agricultural community.
Thank you. Diane, you will respond first to our fourth question, which will come from Bob.
This is a well-timed question. What do you see as the states and the federal government's roles in managing and administering public lands?
Public lands are critical. They're critical for grazing. They're critical for our water. That's where the water comes from. And they're absolutely essential for our outdoor economy, for our resort economy. Many people rely on public lands. I will oppose, strongly oppose, any attempt to sell off public lands or to transfer them to the states. When these kinds of ideas were coming up when I was in the Colorado House, I checked with the Department of Natural Resources. It turns out we don't have the staff and we don't have the money to manage public lands. We barely manage our oil and gas permits now. If the DNR, the COGCC had to deal with oil and gas on federal lands, there would be no way they could do it. So transferring to the states won't work, and selling them is, in my opinion, bad economically for all of us. And also, who would they sell to? You and I wouldn't be able to access those public lands for hunting, for fishing, for snowmobiling, for a wide variety of outdoor activities. Public lands are part of who we are in Western Colorado. And they're also important directly in our economy for those who directly make their living off them, but they also bring other businesses.
Thank you. Scott, you'll have 1.5 minutes to respond.
When we're talking about the interaction between the state and the federal government, I think we need to be bringing up sage grouse. You know, we have great programs, having a collaborative effort right through our local communities, local farmers, ranchers, our state, to actually be able to reinvigorate that species. Unfortunately, Washington is overruling it. That's why I want to be able to move the BLM west, to be able to get the administrators out here on where we're actually being impacted. Our public lands are incredibly valued. But if you say you don't want to have any conveyances, well, you might want to go down to Dolores County. Had a conveyance of land for a fire station, the first real responders to be able to go out. The Forest Service was in support of it. So just to completely close the door in terms of having conveyances back into our communities to be able to meet some immediate needs that are going to benefit not only the BLM but the Forest Service, I think is going to be ill-advised. Selling it off, no one's suggesting that. We need to make sure that we're protecting those public lands. I have a bill right now that we passed with bipartisan support in terms of the ski area retention fee bill. Make sure that we're keeping some of that money home to be able to enhance those opportunities, to be able to create something when we talk about all of the above. It's just not energy, it's also going to be outdoor recreation. The enjoyment of those public lands and our businesses' ability to be able to grow those jobs as well. That's legislation that we're supporting and will continue to advocate for.
Thank you.
Your Secretary of the Interior is the one who wants one size fits all for sage grouse, not us in Colorado. John Swartout has been working for many years to make sure that our Colorado plan is accepted in Washington. Ryan Zinke has said no. I went to my first ranch looking at the way private ranchers were able to really fix sage grouse habitat in 1995. There have been partnerships since then.
Thank you. Question number 5 will come from Sandra, and Scott, you will respond first.
Jordan Cove LNG is a proposed state-of-the-art liquefied natural gas terminal and storage facility to be located within the International Port of Coos Bay, Oregon. A recent U.S. Geological Service assessment discovered that the Mancos Shale in the Piceance Basin of Colorado contains an estimated average of 66 trillion cubic feet of shale natural gas, 74 million barrels of shale oil, and 45 million barrels of natural gas liquids. If approved, the Jordan Cove LNG pipeline would intersect with western Colorado and provide a means to export LNG, which would reinvigorate our energy industry. Do you support the Jordan Cove LNG terminal, pipeline, and storage facility? Why or why not?
I most certainly do. We've advocated for Jordan Cove from the beginning. When we're talking about international markets, when the Obama administration refused to be able to advance Jordan Cove, they said there wasn't a market. I came out of the private sector. It's pretty tough to sell something when you don't have the product. You've got to be able to deliver it. Well, a company was able to go over and actually establish the market in Japan. We have orders right now to be able to take a good portion of the pipeline, to be able to deliver that, and to responsibly develop that resource here. You know, I've gone out and actually visited with the folks who work in the oil and gas industry. People with dirt underneath their fingernails. They live here, they work here, they want to make sure it's done right. Why would we not want to grasp that opportunity when the USGS points out that we have potentially the second largest reserve in the country right here? Let's put Americans to work. Let's start creating American energy security. Let's employ our people. To me, that is good common sense. When we're looking at the international markets, one thing we worry about are boom and bust cycles. That will help level out, simply be out of demand, to be able to make sure that we're maintaining not only some stability in prices, but we're creating jobs here for our people, for our families. I think we all need to be embracing that.
Diane, you will have 1.5 minutes to respond.
Mancos Shale Formation, indeed all the formations in the Piceance, are the future of gas. The question is there a market? Japan has done a deal with Russia for pipelines and for offshore exploration. China, the other big importer of our Colorado gas, or we hope it would be, has done a deal with Russia. We are not sure what the markets actually will be for our Colorado gas. Those jobs depend on having those markets. So until someone shows me the data, and I've looked really hard, it's still not clear to me with these deals with Russia between Japan and China that we will have a steady, certain, predictable market. The gas market is notoriously volatile, and quite right. If we had long-term contracts, it wouldn't be as volatile, for sure. I'm not at all sure we're going to have those. And also remember, it's not Jordan Cove we're really looking at here. Yes, it is, but that's in Oregon. Those jobs are in Oregon. The pipeline, the Pacific Connector pipeline, which goes to Malin, Oregon, which is where our western pipeline that already exists has its terminus, that's the key. Guess what? It goes over agricultural lands in Oregon. What about eminent domain there? I want questions answered. Right now, I haven't taken a position.
Thank you. Scott, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Pretty easy to take a position. You're for it or you're against it. Why would you be against jobs? Right here, to be able to create them right here. You know, I think when we look at a real difference probably between us is we've got someone who's saying that I don't want to support it and I'll figure out a way to maybe try and stop it. She may have missed. I just cited that we have orders for natural gas right now to be able to deliver it. Contracts are in place. The demand is there. And I'll always submit, nobody will outdo America when it comes to competition.
Thank you. Our sixth and final panel question will come from Mike Murphy and be directed to Diane first.
Thank you, Cindy. In the past, we've seen attempts by the federal government to control Colorado water by attempting to maneuver around Colorado water law. How will you protect Colorado from any future attempts from the federal government and its agencies from this intrusion into our water rights? As we continue to experience a very dry year, what steps do you feel are necessary and appropriate to assure that current and future water needs are met?
At the state level in 2013 and 2015, and finally with success in 2016, I co-sponsored a bill with a Republican you may know, Jerry Sonnenberg, that stated clearly that our prior appropriation, our Colorado water law, which is in our 1876 Constitution, was not to be overridden by the federal government. He sponsored something very similar in the U.S. House. What's important to bear in mind here is that folks in Washington do not. I served on the Interim Water Committee for 5 years. I served as the vice chair of the Ag Committee, which is where the water bills go. I know for a fact that the folks in Washington do not understand prior appropriation. And they don't understand drought. And they don't understand so many of the issues that we here in Colorado deal with every single day. So I think it's critical to have a representative who has worked in the state on water and water policy and water law, and who has worked across the aisle with my Republican colleagues on this issue, who really understands Colorado law. We can't have the federal government dictating what we have in our Constitution. We need to also make sure, and it's not a federal thing, and I'll tell you later what it is.
Thank you. Scott, you have 1.5 minutes to respond.
You know, I appreciate my opponent following the lead that I established in Congress to be able to protect Colorado water, our priority-based systems. I hope she'll join with me also in opposing WOTUS, the waters of the U.S., to make sure that we're protecting all Coloradoans, all Westerners when it comes to water. We've got a real challenge in terms of seeing the federal government continuing to try and reach out to be able to capture water rights. The Forest Service, the bill that we had directed out of Washington, to be able to make sure that as a conditional use of permit, that our ski areas weren't having to sign their water rights over to the federal government with no compensation. Called the taking, it's just called theft. They were impacting also our ranching community. What right to be able to divert water out of a stream No, you weren't going to do that unless you were willing to sign your water rights over to the federal government to be able to get that permit renewed. We've got priority-based here in Colorado. We have state law that the federal government has always respected. And third, in Colorado and in the West, water is a private property right. We're committed to making sure we're standing up for that, and we will not allow the federal government to step into Colorado water law.
Thank you.
Actually, the use of water is a private property right. According to the Colorado Constitution, we the people own the water. Water rights are for the use of that water in a specific time, a specific place, and for a specific reason. That's what a water right is. It's for a specific beneficial use. I think it's really important that now in Colorado we have recreational and channel diversion rights, RISs, which allow communities to, we'll talk later about that.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, panelists, for your questions. We will now move into the cross-examination portion of this debate. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes to answer questions of their opponent on matters pertinent to the race or the office. Please keep in mind that the examining candidate controls the time and may interrupt their opponent's answers or amend their question if they feel their opponent is confused about the question, is avoiding the question, or is presenting a monologue rather than answering the question. The examining candidate should use this time to ask questions and not present a monologue, and they should allow a reasonable opportunity for their opponent to directly answer those questions. This moderator will not interfere during each 5-minute cross-exam unless the examining candidate is presenting a monologue rather than asking questions of their opponent, or if the candidates are being disrespectful toward one another. Candidate Scott Tipton will begin the cross-examination.
Thank you, Cindy. And Ms. Mitch Bush, Diane, one of the most important votes that you cast is probably the first vote in Washington. It's for leadership. You only have one person that has showed an intention of running to be Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Are you going to support her?
I'm going to support the candidate who is the best for our district. We need new leadership. I will not necessarily support Nancy Pelosi. But you know what? You guys are using this issue to cast our attention away from the bills that you have passed.
You know, last month, we had a vote in the House of Representatives, and it was on whether or not we support the people that are trying to be able to protect our borders. We have threats, as you probably know, terrorism, gangs, and also of drugs coming across the border. Do you support ICE? How would you have voted on that bill?
I believe ICE needs to be reformed, not done away with. We need border security, but we need to be a little more evidence-based. If Marco Rubio and Michael Bennet could come together for comprehensive immigration reform, bipartisan in 2013, let's do that.
Now, when it comes to sanctuary cities, we have some in the 3rd District. Do you support them?
It is the right of cities and towns to decide what happens within their boundaries, not the federal government.
Let's follow that up just a little bit. What if a city or town decides not to pay federal taxes?
That's a different kind of decision. You're talking about whether a city, town, or county.
So you don't respect federal law when it comes to that?
It's not that I don't respect federal law. It's that many of our local law enforcement officials that I know do not want to be ICE enforcers. They want to essentially enforce the law in their communities.
So you're going to support sanctuary cities? Just want to be clear.
I don't think that is up to the Congress. I think that's up to those cities,
but
towns,
you
and
support
counties.
sanctuary cities. So
I don't
appreciate
support
you
them.
answering
I don't not.
that. And I'd like to give you one more chance. Jordan Cove. Can you support it? There are contracts in place. Do you support it?
If those questions are answered, if we have Colorado jobs,
There's a contract.
not Oregon jobs, that contract is not long-term, and Japan has a contract with Russia.
Can you excuse me just one second? You may have missed what was in the question. USGS notes that we have the second largest reserve. We have the pipelines to be able to get it out of here. Will you support Jordan Cove and an opportunity to be able to create those jobs here?
If we have the markets that create jobs here and create demand for Colorado gas.
Where do you think it's going to be produced if the gas is here? Wouldn't that create jobs?
If it can go somewhere, if it can be sold.
So there are contracts in place. Will you support it?
Those are not long-term contracts. It's the usual boom and bust.
Well, I understand why you don't probably want to maybe answer that
If
question.
you give me the information.
Why don't we move on to health care? You'd like to talk a lot about that. How are you going to pay for your big government-run health care?
I don't have big government-run health care.
You're asking for single
now,
payer.
Please, you asked me a question, let me answer it. Those are the rules. The Affordable Care Act needs to be protected because of pre-existing conditions. The bill package that you're talking about with these so-called
No, you're talking about on my time. You're talking about implementing a single-payer system. That's not the Affordable Care Act. Single-payer, $32 trillion projected cost. How are you going to pay for it?
That is an old projected cost, which relies on some really bad
it's probably
data.
gone up. Probably gone up.
No, it hasn't gone up because that cost didn't take into account the administrative costs of the current system. We are the only industrialized country that pays over 33% for administration.
How much
of
are you
healthcare.
raising taxes to pay for it? What's the number? What's the cost?
I do not know what that number is.
So you're promoting something that you don't know how much it's going to cost.
I'm not proposing it. It already exists.
Yeah.
John Conyers'
And you
bill,
don't know what it
H.R.
costs.
676, talks about it. Your CBO is not allowed to give a number because you know why? It's dead in committee.
Thank you, candidates. Now, candidate Diane Mitch Bush will have 5 minutes to question Scott Tipton.
For a long time previously, you did not support the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Now, in election year, you say you do. But you're not listed as a co-sponsor on H.R. 502, which is the actual bill that came out of your committee. It didn't come out of your committee, I wish it had, to actually give funding for this. Mike Kaufman is listed as a co-sponsor. Why aren't you?
First, you're wrong. We've always supported the Land Water Conservation Fund. We think that we need to have some reforms on it. But if it's just going to be stopped, we've said we will vote for that to be able to pass. You may remember...
That's not what the quotes in the past say that you said.
Well, before you quit the state legislature midterm, you may well remember you still get to be able to vote on the bill. That's what counts, not just strictly the co-sponsorship on it. We've always supported the Land Water Conservation
Why isn't your name on it? Mike Kaufman's is and other Republicans are. Why?
We haven't had the form sent over. Happy to go ahead and sign on as a co-sponsor.
Oh, great.
So.
Let's go to the next question. The VA currently and for a while has had the ability to negotiate drug prices. Their costs for their patients are less than a third of what Medicare's are. Would you favor allowing Medicare to negotiate for drug prices?
You're talking about Part D?
I am talking about the ability of Medicare to negotiate.
So that's under Part D.
in Part D.
That's in Part D.
But right now, they're not allowed to.
You don't understand how the negotiations work. They're actually
I do understand how they work.
Apparently you don't. Because they're actually conducted by for and non-profit insurance companies who negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies
always
for the right
negotiate
to be able to
with the
deliver.
pharmaceuticals for prices. whether it's for everybody.
It is not Medicare, which is what you were citing, who is doing the negotiation. These are private companies.
But someone representing Medicare, not pharma and not insurance. Let's go on to the next question. You voted against a bill which would have allowed VA doctors at the Veterans Administration, to prescribe cannabis for PTSD. Study after study has shown that veterans benefit from using marijuana, cannabis for PTSD. Why did you vote no?
Until we had the studies that are going to be in place and working with the VA, they're actually prohibited from being able to use this because it's a Schedule I drug.
Yes, and would you change it? Would you change that?
Once we get all of the studies in, we're just now learning.
Scott, we've had studies for 30 years.
You just asked me a question, and I'll remind you. I get to answer it.
Yes, but we've had studies for 30 years.
Here's the challenge that we really face. We're now getting studies that are coming out showing the impact on young people that are using it. So we need to make sure we do not, in the state of Colorado, we do not have limitations in terms of the THC levels that are in place, that we need to be addressing.
Actually, Scott, you need to look at that a little more closely. I worked very hard on some of those. So would you or would you not allow doctors at the VA to prescribe cannabis?
I think, personally, I think there's probably some circumstances that can work for that to actually be something, people in pain with cancer, and that to be able to address it.
But they aren't allowed to as a Schedule I substance.
Yep.
As you know, the administration, as we talked about before, has cut the number of 2A and 2B visas. What are you doing right now to help our businesses get those visas?
We'd actually sat down with Kirsten Nielsen to be able to speak with her, and as I'd noted earlier in our conversation here, they did up some of the H-2B. Here's the big problem. We are not seeing the response coming in for the ag visas to be able to come in. We need to get the renewing visas that are going to be in place. We're working with Chairman Conaway in terms of some of the Farm Bill, which is currently in conference, to be able to address some of those concerns.
Speaking of the Farm Bill, let's move along. The House Farm Bill is very different from the Senate Farm Bill. A number of ranchers and farmers that I know, as well as a number of agricultural organizations, were very concerned with the House bill. The Senate bill improves on some things. Would you, if you were in conference,
what was the concern?
The concern had to do with CRP. The concerns had to do with what the Trump budget has done to training programs and small business loans.
CRP was actually included
in the Senate bill, but you didn't include enough in the House bill, and that's what's absolutely critical. You guys say you support ag. Why didn't you step up when Trump's FY18 and FY19 budget cut rural development loans, it cut CRP, it cut training for ranchers?
Candidates.
Why weren't you there? Why weren't you there?
I'd be happy to respond to that.
Okay.
Thank you both for that lively exchange. Each candidate will now have 3 minutes to present their closing remarks. We will begin with candidate Scott Tipton.
Well, again, I thank all of you for taking the time. Appreciate our panelists here to be with us this evening. I think we do have a real choice in this election. Just visiting just a moment ago, my opponent is proposing single-payer health care. She doesn't know what the cost is going to be, won't tell you how much the taxes are going to go up. I think that's important to know. We're going to be standing up for your choice to make sure that you can pick a program which is going to work for you, for your family, to be able to address the long-term costs in terms of families, when it looks at the punitive costs in terms of the high deductibles which we have under the current Affordable Care Act, to make sure that we're having a system that will literally work for us. We're going to advocate for our jobs, to make sure that we're standing up for our responsible development of our resources here in the 3rd Congressional District, literally calling for all of the above. Standing up for our water, standing up for our farm and ranch community to make sure that they have what they need to be able to grow the crops and then to be able to sell those crops as well. To make sure that we're standing up for the opioid crisis, which my opponent hasn't addressed. Huge problem for so many in the 3rd District. that we need to be able to address. We just appropriated $7 billion to be able to get it back to our communities, to make sure, with mental health dollars as well, to be able to make sure that we are trying to solve the problem. Something that cannot be completely done by the federal government, but a collaborative effort that's going to have to take place between not only what the federal government can do, but our states, our communities, and our families as well. We're going to continue to stand for our veterans, to be able to give them choice, which she wants to deny in terms of her single-payer health care, to make sure that they can actually get a doctor in their local community to be able to address their physical needs when they have that challenge, and to make sure that we're continuing on those personal levels as well, to make sure that we're filling out the real needs for each individual veteran as they're having different challenges that they face in their communities. You know, we've got a very clear choice in terms of somebody that wants to be able to grow government, to be able to raise taxes, in something that we simply cannot afford. This is where I would ask for your vote and your support. I grew up in the 3rd Congressional District. The values that we express and that we stand for are the values that we all live. Making sure that we have an opportunity for our children to be able to live something that many of us believed was an American birthright, the American dream. That comes with opportunity, not more government, not more taxes, but freeing up people to be able to create their own vision for the future. That's what we're going to continue to fight for. God bless you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Diane Mitch Bush, you will now have 3 minutes for your closing remarks, and you will have the last word.
Thank you all so much for being here, and as always, a big thank you to Club 20. You know, talk is cheap in elections, and we have a crisis in Congress on many levels. One of those levels is the U.S. Congress has abdicated its responsibility to be a check and balance for this administration. I will not abdicate that responsibility. This Congress is so well known for bickering, partisan sniping, and personal attacks. And we've seen a little bit of that tonight. I don't do that in the legislature. My MO is working with everyone, is listening to everyone. And my MO is especially reading the bills, knowing what's in them, and knowing how that affects the people I work for. I don't work for big lobbyists. I don't work for the party or for party leadership. I have always acted in the interest of my constituents. That is what you can count on me to do in the United States Congress. We need a real representative who actually listens to us, who has real town halls. We need a representative who actually answers constituents' questions. We need a representative who does her homework. We need a representative who will defend Medicare, Social Security. We need a representative who will take seriously one of the most important functions of the U.S. Congress, and that is the power to declare war. Not the president, not the NSA, not any other group, but Congress. We have a crisis in cybersecurity in this country. It is a big national security issue which this Congress has not addressed. It is siloed, and we need to get on it now. But most of all, we need respect and civility in the U.S. Congress. No name-calling, no labeling. You know, I've been labeled tonight, and certainly in a group of emails from his campaign, that I'm a socialist. I am not a socialist. I grew up in Minnesota as a Minnesota DFLer, Democratic Farmer Labor. That's my set of assumptions about what the Democratic Party is. The Democratic Party works for workers, it works for farmers, and I'll work for you.
Thank you.